All right, battlers, welcome back to a brand new meta discussion. I have with me the DOJO members. We are talking about the Rose Cup meta. We're going to cover everything from the top picks, the different areas that you should be covering, what you should be concerned with, new legacy moves that are coming back, and everything in between. I hope you'll stick around for this discussion. I do have with me Matt DiFiore. Matt, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm one of the local member of the dojo, one of the local battlers in the Tampa Bay area. I help out with organizing tournaments and one of the regulars at our weekly freestyle events.
Awesome, Matt. We also have Lyndon Ryu, Season 1 Ace.
Hey guys, Lyndon Ryu here. I'm a member of Team Nvent. Call me Jake. B has an LCal, as well as Clash and Cliff. And then also I'm a part of Victory Road PvP, the organization that brought the Orlando Mega Cup just this past weekend.
Church is not with us at the moment. He's going to be joining the call in a few minutes. I just want to hit you with a rapid fire question. So the old legacy moves just came back. Which one Pokemon are you most excited about to get the legacy moves back on?
Ooh, probably Poison Fang Venomoth, actually. Only because there's been 2 cups now in Timeless and Jungle, including Twilight, where that mod has been relevant, but it's been out of reach because I have not had access to one. I have not had one on myself, nor was there anyone available for trade.
Well, actually, I think the core meta have been lucky enough to finagle some trades so that I had most of these. I had the Haunter with Shadow Ball, which is awesome, and then I had Double Legacy Magneton, and then also the Poison Fang Venomoth. But I think I definitely like an upgrade on the IVs for my Magneton, just because mine are so bad. And I haven't really played around with it too much just because the roll was so bad. I feel like it might have some play potentially in this cup, even though there's a lot of ground and fighting in it. So who knows, but definitely just overall happy to get that one.
Personally, I'm really excited for Shadow Ball Haunter, but I also share that same concern. I think the Hypno I traded with my little brother who stopped playing about a year ago, and it went lucky, and it's, I think, 1482, but it's a lucky Hypno with Shadow Ball. And then the same goes for my Poliwrath. Up until Mudshot was re-added, I was running a lucky Poliwrath with 1499 CP, but it definitely got the job done. So as we move on in the conversation, I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about the Rose Cup meta. As you know, the Rose Cup was announced on the live stream at the Orlando Mega. It was a really, really cool event. And since then, I know a lot of trainers have really dived into it, but I know it's been a little bit tricky as well because we are getting Fusion 2.0 with Empoleon, and now that we've buffed Megahorn for Heracross, some people are even calling it Fusion 2.1 or 2.2. It's just like another version that we have to deal with. So I know a lot of trainers probably haven't had a great amount of time to look at the Rose Cup, but I just wanted to kind of run down the Meta Simplified Guide and ask, kind of based on each area, what your thoughts are and what you think trainers need to look out for. So as we move into the first section, I just want to cover flying types. I think the question of the day, guys, is in every single cup that it's been in, Skarmory is the best flyer. Is Skarmory the best flyer in the Rose Cup?
No, mainly due to how centric fire and steel types are in this meta. Skarmory doesn't do well against other steel types historically. Steelix is winnable with an energy lead, and depending on how Steelix shields, but it's a generally unfavorable matchup. In Probopass utterly walls it. While on the fire side, you have both Charizard and Marowak are also prominent. Skarmory is a viable flying type, but battlers should not feel locked in any way that should be a locked spot. Gliscor and even Golbat should get some consideration as the main flyers on their team.
To add to that, one thing I think that's a little weird about Skarmory in this cup is it is the flyer that kind of beats all the other flyers, but overall it performs worse against the meta, it feels like, compared to everything else. Like, Gliscor has the great coverage. I feel like Drifblim has some interesting matchups with the Icy Wind. And then Golbat too, I mean, it's a great anti-fairy, but then Skarmory is just so slow. And maybe I'm still on the pacing of Fusion right now, but it just hasn't been working for me so far when I brought it.
That's a really good point. And if you go to PvPoke and look at the top flying types for the Rose Cup, listing down in chronological order, you have Charizard, Gliscor, Skarmory, Gligar, Golbat, and Aerodactyl. And then after that, you drop down to number 33 for Drifblim, and then Tranquil is number 43 with Air Slash, Sky Attack, and Heat Wave. So there's not really a whole lot to dig for as far as flying types are concerned. And it's funny to me that both Gliscor and Gligar both rank so highly as flying types.
Yeah, it is kind of nuts. I mean, I feel like I've seen Gliscor around in freestyle. One of the guys in our town brings it quite often. Yeah, other than that, I haven't really thought of it as a too great of a Pokemon, but at least in Great League. So it's interesting that they were able to craft something, a meta based on colors, that finds this one sitting so high up top.
Guys, we just had Church join us on the call. Church, if you want to give a brief introduction. You just came from a Fusion Cup in Brandon. How did things go, and how are you?
I'm doing all right. It was another one of those funny Swiss rounds. Made it interesting. I came in second place, but didn't have to play the guy who went in first, which is Danny. It was pretty exciting. Felt strong in my team. The new charge mechanics pretty interesting, but yeah, Fusion's still going strong out there.
Church, we just talked about flying types, and if there's anything you'd like to add, feel free. We did look at Skarmory, Charizard, Gliscor, Gligar, and a few others, but is there anything you'd like to add to the flying type debate?
Well, the main thing would probably be that Skarmory is a flying type, but it's not like that defensively. The way to take it out, in my opinion, this meta is going to be fire, which is actually at the forefront for one of the first times, with no waters especially. So I would attack Skarmory that way. As far as Gliscor, man, or the Glide brothers, or whatever they want to be called. Matt has been using Gliscor for a while. We have another guy, I can't think of who right now, who uses Gliscor. Uses it pretty effectively, especially as like an anti-tank too with the Earthquake. They've done some interesting stuff with it. But my answer for that is just going to be Ice Punches from wherever I can get them, probably Medicham. But it seems to be very bait dependent. It's just kind of how you want to play. The play style, you can kind of do it as an anti-tank or as an anti-fighter. So, I mean, you can really, it's kind of it's not exactly a ninja, but like you can kind of fill a role differently, however you want to, and then just kind of do it that way.
Absolutely. I think you're 100% right that it's very bait dependent. You definitely want to land that Earthquake against a lot of things in the meta. And the Night Slash is interesting, but I have been struggling when I pick between Fury Cutter and Air Slash. I have a hard time deciding what fast moves to run. But we are going to talk about Gligar and Gliscor, both of those in a few minutes. But we've already touched on this subject a couple of times. I wanted to discuss fire types, and I think a good segue is Charizard, because we're already talking about the flying types, and then that's an easy slide right over to the fire column of the Rose Cup meta. So do you guys have any thoughts on Charizard? It just went up to number 1 on PvPoke. Do you think it's king of the Rose Cup?
That rock weakness holds it back. But that double rock weakness, when you have Rock Throw, Probo, and Alolan Grappler, you could easily trap it. It's not hard to imagine yourself being in a match and having your Charizard trapped against a Rock Throw user and just getting farmed down really quickly. But it has a unique set of matchups for being able to beat Steelix, the Glide Brothers easily, being able to take on fairies, as well as being a soft fighting counter. It beats a lot of things, but it doesn't beat anything impressively.
I think the reason why it might be considered king is because definitely with this new CMP mechanic, the attack is going to matter. And I know it has a very, very high attack. I assume that's why it jumped in the first place, because all of those CMP ties are now determined. So it's going to kind of remind me, what it reminds me of is like, well, not exactly Twilight, because like, you know, Toxicroak was king and it could be taken out by Confusion, but kind of more like Jungle, how Vigoroth is like the thing and you can kind of do whatever you want with it. The charge moves are strong, the attack's high, so you're going to win those CMPs, but it has one of the hardest counters in the game. You know, its Heracross is Rock Throw or Smackdown.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now it's having a lot of success as people are figuring out the meta, but again, because like everyone's saying with the rock weakness, I think it could be pretty easy to trap. It kind of has the same high risk, high reward feel to me as something like Probopass, which, you know, Probopass, when it's in a good matchup, it's freaking great, but if it's in a bad one, you just sit there and kind of just feel like on to the next one. So it kind of feels like that to me a little bit.
I definitely agree. And although Blast Burn is a great move, I found that in practice, if you come up against a fresh Probopass or a fresh Steelix, the one Blast Burn is just not enough to pull out the win. So if you're trapped against a wall like that, like you guys mentioned, the rock throws are really going to chip it down really quickly. And then if you don't have an energy advantage, it's hard to even break through those walls. So it's not the best all around, and it's easy to trap, as you guys mentioned before. As we talk about Charizard, we can expand a little bit more to the other fires. The most obvious one is Alolan Marowak. Do you guys have any feelings on Alolan Marowak, and how many of you are running Fire Blast?
Well, I'll say that my Marowak does have Fire Blast on it right now, simply because I was gonna be cheeky during the Fusion Cup and try and have that as like an anti-Noctowl. But it takes so many fire spins to get up there that it is so bad. So I think, the primary moveset on PvP Poke is Shadow Ball, Bone Club, and I think that that's probably the right way to go, just because, again, Fire Blast takes so much and so long to get up to, especially with Ghosts flying around. But I think it's a nice Pokemon. I think Bone Club's one of the worst moves in the game, and it's painful to have that as your bait. So again, it kind of feels very bait dependent. Consistency score is at 69.5, and everyone talks about how Gliscor is so bait dependent. Gliscor is at 71.7. So Marowak is worse in the bait department. And also, to flip back to Charizard's consistency is 67.9. So just those are the key things to think about when you think about the fires.
The main perk of Alolan Marowak over Charizard is you do have that fighting chance against the two main steals in Probopass and Steelix. If you call the Earthquake against Steelix and you're able to land the Shadow Ball, as we all know from Sinister, you have the win. In Probopass, you can at least significantly chip it down enough with those fire spins and bone clubs to cripple it and prevent the Probopass from its matchup against Drifblim is significantly improved compared to what it was in the Sinister, as that Ominous Wind Shadow Ball set was for Drifblim was a very tough matchup, and now that it's Shadow Ball Icy Wind, you have a much easier time not just going for the bait, but probably just doing straight Shadow Ball and getting the win.
Personally, I do see Drifblim falling quite a bit because of the new mechanic where the buffs and the debuffs cancel out after you swap. Just having that debuff, and you can debuff a couple of Pokemon and then swap out, and then when you encounter them again, they're debuffed. It was just great. And now that that's been taken away, I think a lot of trainers are going to have to change their strategies in how that is performed.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, it definitely changes it out. You can't be a ninja and just drop in for a little bit, dip out, and kind of pop in just to drop an Icy Wind on a Pokemon, because they can just chase you again. So now it's definitely something to consider, and something playstyles will need to adjust.
Absolutely. Guys, as we wrap up the fire conversation, I wanted to touch on one Pokemon that some trainers say has been forgotten. I was actually looking at this, and I think it might be really good. I'm kind of torn on the moveset, though. How do you feel about Blaziken in the Rose Cup?
Still currently the candidate
if Stone Edge were to be reintroduced, I think a Stone Edge Blaziken would actually have quite a bit of play. But I think that's probably the only way, personally, because if you can Stone Edge the Skarmorys, you can basically one-shot a Golbat. You can do really well against an Aerodactyl. And then if you pack a Blaze Kick, maybe for shield baiting, that might be helpful. For a moment, I thought about doing counter, Blaze Kick, and close combat, just because close combat is going to nuke those walls like Steelix and Probopass. But then again, you don't want to reinvent the wheel with Blast Burn. It's already an excellent move. So trying to make Blaziken work is a little bit tricky. But I definitely think on the topic of legacies, like we were all day today, I think Stone Edge Blaziken, if it's reintroduced in February, I think it could really change up the meta. So moving on to the next area, we had the walls and tanks. We've already mentioned these kind of briefly, and I don't think we'll spend a lot of time on these because there seem to be two really standout options. You do have Probopass and Steelix. I think Probopass definitely for its rock throw capability. I know some trainers are still running Spark, but I really think you definitely want that Probopass to bring down the flying types as quickly as possible. And with the rock throw, you can get to the Magnet Bomb for the fairy coverage as well. And then, as a lot of trainers have already discussed, Steelix does beat Probopass. Steelix is good in a lot of ways, but there's also some room for improvisation on its moveset as well. I played against Shiny Hunter Ben, who is bringing Thunderfang Steelix, which is super interesting to me. Definitely gave my flying types quite a tough fight. But outside of those two, the only other rock thrower I've identified is Aerodactyl, and I think that Church might have something to say about this in terms of tanks and rock throwers.
First and foremost, when it comes to Probo, rock throw is definitely the way to go in this meta, and Magnet Bomb has somehow found its way into the meta as well. You know what I mean? But it is definitely what you want to have. The Spark is just, you can't farm the Charizard with Spark because you're already at a disadvantage if it has the energy advantage and if it gets to that second Blast Burn. But definitely with Steelix. Thunderfang is my favorite thing to play with right now because I like Steelix too.
Are there any rock throwers that we're leaving out?
A Alolan Graveler maybe?
Yeah, that's one. And this isn't a rock thrower, but a Smackdown user. You can run Smackdown Rhyperior is the other one.
Oh man, that's a whole separate discussion right on Rhyperior. One, you're playing TM Roulette. The other one, you have to run Mudslap Stone Edge on Rhydon, so you can even have a chance to kill the Charizard.
Yep.
I mean, you can go Surf, but essentially you want the Smackdown. So, I mean, you could play. There's a little bit of deception with the Rhyperior, but it's not. I don't know. It's like splitting hairs because essentially you want the Surf, and you're not going to get to Earthquake if you have Smackdown anyway. Do you need to double move it? That's another that's another good question.
Yeah, if you're trying to save Stardust for Go Battle League, Rhyperior might be the key.
I mean, it's not like you're going to get to anything else anyway, and so I mean, the walls they have a role. So
yeah, the main downside to using a non-steel wall like Rhyperior is Rhyperior does lose to the Charm users. In Clefable and Wigglytuff. So if you're going to use Rhyperior, you got to make the Charm coverage somewhere else in your team.
That's real. That's interesting. Oh yeah, because it's not steel.
So squishy. Yeah,
it's not steel. Okay.
Church, I was trying to get you to talk about Magcargo, but we'll move on.
Oh,
it's okay.
No,
it's okay.
Please. Oh,
I was trying two softballs there, and I was
Magcargo, it can tank 2 Blast Burns. It's my favorite thing in the world. It double resists the Fire Spin, so it's probably the hardest counter. It's my favorite thing from Timeless V1 before Octazooka ruined my life. You know what I'm saying? But the Maccargo is very different, but the problem is that's like all it really beats. I mean, you can get the overheat off maybe on like the Steelix or but I mean, I guess it does resist Charm. So I mean, you can, but the overheat nerf. So it's kind of, it's just if you want to play with it, it does the same thing. If you just want to farm Charizard, yeah, but there's better stuff. probably cover the meta a little better.
Moving on to the Ghost, I think Sableye is king of the Ghosts. That's pretty obvious with its Dark and Ghost typing. Spiritomb is also allowed in the Rose Cup, but outside of Sableye, I don't think there's a lot of competition. You do have Haunter, Drifblim, and a few other Pokemon, but do you see any role for any Ghost other than Sableye, or do you have a counter argument to Sableye?
Haunter will always get its play.
Especially now.
People will always be tempted by and there will be those who will master its glass cannon status to bait with that Shadow Punch and then unleash the most powerful Shadow Ball in the game.
And one thing that's interesting about Haunter too is it has the poison typing. So while it might hinder it against confusion users, you don't see too many of those in this cup. So, and it does then it does have, I think it's Sludge Bomb or something.
Yeah.
So Sludge Bomb that can give it coverage against fairies, which some people might be bringing fairies to counter your Ghost role because Sableye will be so prevalent that people will just see, oh, a Ghost, let me bring in my Clefable or Wigglytuff or whatever. But you'll have that Sludge Bomb just sitting there ready in the back if you carry it. If you carry it.
So you're saying run Sludge Bomb instead of Shadow Ball?
I think there's some play in it, and it's the hot move now. So everyone's going to be anticipating it. Now, do I think that Sludge Bomb's the right play? I don't know, but could you flip the role on some things? Well, 100%.
And also, you're probably guaranteed to win every CMP tie, right?
Probably.
That's another good point, yeah. So we've talked a little bit about these Pokemon briefly here and there, and I think the Haunter conversation is also a nice segue because it is a poison type and therefore weak to ground. What do you think about the Rhy family? We have Rhyperior coming in at number 11, Rhydon at 18, and Rhyhorn at 22. Just reading over the movesets here, Rhyperior is a Smackdown user with Superpower and Surf as the preferred moveset, Rhydon with Mud Slap, Surf, and Earthquake, and we do have Rhyhorn with Mud Slap, Stomp, and Bulldoze. If you guys want to cover, maybe take one of each and just kind of maybe talk about each one and the argument for each, whichever one of you guys wants to start off.
Church, take it away. You've already hinted at the element of deception that could happen with Rhyperior.
We talked about just the Surf, but I mean, I haven't seen a lot of Superpower, to be honest. I just haven't. I played against one guy who had like Melmetal in my draft league who had Superpower. I mean, I guess
it looks like Rhyperior does beat Charizard, Gligar, Alolan, Marowak, Golbat, and Skarmory. Yeah.
All right. Skull Bash, Stone Edge, Superpower, Surf, and I mean Return if you want it. Yeah, that's just a lot of 5 moves. Skull Bash is going to be resisted by most rock types, so you don't even want that. It's like I said, I guess you run the Earthquake. And then as far as Rhydon goes, it's Mud Slap. I don't think it has any other move that even matters.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, Rock Smash. Yes, it has one move. and it is Mud Slap. Earth, yeah, you just run the Surf and the Stone Edge because you don't have coverage against the Charizard because that's all you would need it for anyway. So yeah, Mud Slap, Surf, got to be Stone Edge.
Yeah, Rhydon serves more of an anti-steal role by being a Mud Slap user. So you're using Rhydon. If you have the luxury of Rhydon, you're primarily using it against Probopass, Steelix, and if they're running a poison type such as a Drapion, Skuntank, or Haunter.
Interesting. Lyndon, do you have much of an argument for Rhyhorn?
Well, I'll say that almost all of its moves are normal. Or at least so it has Bulldoze, which also is a very bad move. So, I mean, it must be its stats that are giving it even a semblance of being ranked so high. But save the dust. Don't invest in this.
I caught one that's ranked 111, and I will give you this fun fact because I just looked it up. Rhyhorn beats the other 2 Rhys. It beats Rhydon with a battle score of 532 and Rhyperior with a battle score of 793. So if you need to kill some Rhys, bring Rhyhorn.
If somebody comes through with the shiny Rhyhorn, I forfeit. That's crazy. That's insane. Oh man! What is just mud slapping and bulldozing it to death?
No, correction. It is mud slapping and stomping you to death.
Oh my goodness! If I want to see that on video, that's what I want to see. Somebody please meet me at a tournament and stomp me out. I just want to see it.
How many hundreds of battles would we have to do to get good stomp footage?
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh my goodness. Guys, speaking of stomp, we are moving on to the fighters. The fighters are going to stomp all over a lot of these Pokemon, including the Rise and the Walls. Medicham seems like the king fighter, but Machamp is also getting tons of play. If we can, let's compare and contrast these guys just a little bit and talk about what their strengths and weaknesses are. There's a very strong argument for Medicham as it beats all the other fighters, but Machamp has some interesting coverage. What do you guys think about the fighters, and are there any that I'm missing?
Rock Slide is what gives Machamp its niche. If you don't fear losing the fighting mirror against Medicham, being able to surprise an opponent with Rock Slide against their Golbat, against their Gliscor or Charizard, it gives it a nice way to flip a match unexpectedly. That allows it to act sort of as like one of those ninja pokes that we talked about.
I've heard people referring to Machamp as a pretty safe safe swap, which, definitely if you can get a couple counter advantage, like Matt just said, the Rock Slide's pretty nice as a coverage move. And then Cross Chop being accessible to everyone. I haven't made up my mind yet on it. Medicham's nice. Ice Punch in this cup is nice for the Gliscor. But again, it's kind of interesting. I don't know really between the two. Machamp also loses to Medicham, so...
I do think Machamp kind of reminds me, just vaguely, it's not at all the same, but it reminds me vaguely of Shiftry in Fusion, because if you can switch it in, like you said, Lyndon, get a couple of counters down, and then you can win a lot of matchups. You can drop a couple of Rock Slides on Charizard before it just gets to one Dragon Claw, before it gets to the second one. It can give you a really great advantage in a lot of situations. And another thing I like about Machamp is that the mirror is very, very simple. I found in my mirror matches, Machamp versus Machamp, that whoever lands that cross chop first, essentially all you have to do is land the one cross chop and then shield, and the mirror is over. There's no need to try to QSA body slams with Celio or anything silly like that. It's just a very clear-cut match, but you just have to be sure that you get that right when you do encounter the mirror.
I think I'm going with the fierce yoga instructor himself, Medicham, because it's just the fact that you can still run it so many ways. You can run counter, power up punch, ice punch, and then get some neutral damage and stuff in and do stuff like that. Or you can just go dynamic punch, psychic. You can go dynamic punch, ice punch. You can go, if you just want to beat everything up, you can go counter, power up punch, dynamic punch. So I mean, I kind of prefer that, just because, and the tankiness. I'm not a fan of. Imagine if you have Machamp and Haunter on the same team. That's a lot of skill cap. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I just prefer kind of the clunkier, or not clunkier, but like bulkier choice in Medicham.
When I encountered Quinby in Orlando, he let me know that because the shields were going so quickly in Fusion, the matches were so fast, he went all glass cannons, and I think it was the opposite for Timeless. You really wanted a lot of bulk in Timeless. We saw a lot of Lapras, a lot of Celio, a lot of Kingdra. With this cup, I think we're still trying to figure out what the right amount of bulk is, and I think you have to bring a balanced team. Like Church said, I don't think a Haunter and Machamp team will do very well unless you catch like the perfect lead situation and then go from there. So I definitely think there's an argument for both. Are there any counter users that we're missing? I know Donphan can learn counter. Blaziken we mentioned before. Are there any others?
I think those are probably the two you should be considering third. Donphan, maybe, but...
If you have a legacy Machoke, it is number 42. I don't know if that matters. Karate Chop. I've never even seen that move. I don't even know what it looks like.
Yeah, and it's strictly fighting. I mean, all four of its moves, Cross Chop, Dynamic Punch, Brick Break, Submission, there's no coverage on that Pokemon.
That's so fun.
As we cover the fighters, you can't talk about the fighters in this cup without mentioning the fairy types. I think where fairies fit in the meta is very challenging because countless times in practice already, I've switched a fairy and then gotten countered by a steel type. and it can be really, really tough. So a couple of prominent fairies to consider. Obviously, Wigglytuff and Clefable seem like the big two. Clefable with the fairy coverage. It does have Meteor Mash, as well as access to Psychic and Dazzling Gleam. And then Wiggles has some flying type coverage with its Ice Beam. It does have Dazzling Gleam as well. So those seem like the big two. One that I'm also considering is Granbull. How do you feel about how fairies fit into the Rose Cup meta, and how would you like to use fairies? Or if you're using fairies at all on your team, what is your strategy for fairies?
It's more to use them as part of a 2 Pokemon core of double hitting fast moves. So what I like to pair a Charm user with Drapion for that neutral dark damage with Bite. With them, they have pretty wide coverage in the meta, as most fires actually go down to them between Drapion and a Charm user. You actually have a little Marowak, Charizard, and Blaziken covered. Your main issue is that Drapion just can't take down the main steals. So you need that counter user for them to be backed up by a fire user. But between you doing that two heavy hitting fast move combo, you can actually have some pretty wide coverage. But on their own, they seem to be more technical specialists, designed to take out ghosts that are not named Alolan Marowak in the fighters.
You mentioned Granbull, and I was looking at it. Well, it's interesting because it recommends Snarl, or PvPoke recommends Snarl, which makes it a fairy that would be running a dark fast move. So it's going to lose to the other fairies, but it changes things up a lot. So it's something to think about and it also is running close combat, and it's not that bulky of a Pokemon. So once that defense drops, you got to get out of there. It has some interesting play because again, the close combat will turn around matchup against the Steel, and it can charge up so fast that it'll probably get to the charge move before its opponents will. I haven't looked at it a ton, but it's interesting.
So this was actually brought to my attention because I mentioned to a friend that I wanted to run Granbull because I wanted to run Charm, and it's the only fairy, at least that I see, that has close combat. And so many times I'm trapped in that situation against a Steel type, and I really wish I could punch my way through the Steel type, and close combat seems like a good option to do that. But my friend pointed out that it was running Snarl, and close combat is a 45 energy move. So after 4 Snarls, you get a close combat. So if you want to bust through the tanks, I think that is definitely the way to do it. It's just insanely fast. For that much damage for a move to do 4 fast moves and then get it, it just feels unreal. I haven't practiced with it yet, but on paper it looks devastating. Yeah, I mean, I guess you have some of the ghosts that are weak to dark, but other than that, Snarl's not going to do a whole lot of work, not to the fires, the steals, or the fighters.
So I would assume you would not run Crunch then, but run Play Rough, so it would actually still have that fairy type, that stab fairy move to deal damage with the fighters.
I think that would probably be the right way to go. Yeah.
And then one interesting thing to note about the Charmers is that despite having Meteor Mash, Clefable still loses the Mirror to Wigglytuff in an equal shielding scenario. That was an interesting point that sticks out. And to the earlier point of potentially running a Sludge Bomb on Haunter could definitely be a very tempting option with players because Wiggles is part normal, so it double resists the normal mono type moveset of Haunter, and so it just kind of brushes off those Shadow Punches, Shadow Balls. If you're running a mono type moveset and you're trying to bait a Wigglytuff, the Wiggles player knows every time not to shield the first charge move, because no matter what it is, you're double resisting it.
I think that's the benefit of Wigglytuff, and it also probably takes out Sableye the best under that same premise.
There are a few more things we wanted to cover, one of them being some of the more offbeat things that you're going to find in the Rose Cup. I think the first thing I want to talk about is Razor Leaf users. The only thing I've seen so far is Cherrim. Cherrim is a Razor Leaf user. It's very, very tanky. You do have Vileplume as well, but I feel like Cherrim is the superior one in terms of bulk. Do you guys have any thoughts on Razor Leaf and how it fits into a very heavy meta in terms of ground, steel, and fighters?
The only one I've looked into a lot is Vileplume, and Vileplume weirdly better than I thought it would. Just running default IVs, it can take an Ice Punch from Medicham and win. That's against the recommended Ice Punch, Dynamic Punch move set. So you can afford, even if they're doing Pump and Ice Punch, to not shield the first attack in case they're trying to bait you with Pup. Still tank the Ice Punch and then win. Vileplume, also because of its bulk, is able to take out Steelix. It loses to the Probopass, but it still beats Sableye and is able to take a Shadow Punch from Haunter and still beat Haunter narrowly in the neutral shield scenario. With just running default IV. It's not even optimized to maximize defense and health. Gliscor is if Gliscor cannot go double Earthquake against Vileplume and win, it does have to get the bait, so you can take out Gliscor with Vileplume, but it is a little bit of a tough matchup in that regard. And of course, because of its poison subtyping, it gives you that extra protection against the fairies. And it also can get baited by Machamp with the resisted Cross Chop, take the Rock Slide, and still win comfortably.
Wow, I was not prepared for that. That was like extremely in depth. Wow, Matt.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
I am as known locally as like a grass type enthusiast, and so I'm like, can I rationalize to myself running a grass mid? And even though I just like laid out all of that information, I still don't know if I can rationalize to myself running the Razor Leaf user. And that's in part because because Vileplume's never even been like marginally relevant. I haven't stayed any good IV Oddish.
He hit it on the head. He knows exactly what's going on. It's Mr. Razor Leaf, bro. You already know.
I know, that was like a mic drop moment. Okay. Guys, one more topic I want to talk about that's kind of offbeat are the normal types. So we have seen Wigglytuff as a normal fairy, and that one's pretty obvious, but it definitely fills more of that fairy role. If you look at PvPoke, the rankings for the Rose Cup, at number 24, you have Lickilicky. Lickilicky is running Lick, obviously, with Shadow Ball and Earthquake, and then right behind it at 32, you have Lickitung. Outside of that, you have a couple of normal flyers, and then we get to the big pink egg-shaped Pokemon Chansey. So is there any play for these normal types besides their ridiculous bulk?
The disappointing thing about Lickilicky is, despite having Lick and Shadow Ball, is it still loses to Medicham. I remember running that. I remember looking into that matchup and seeing it's. To be clear, the battle rating is only like 554, and so it's actually a lot closer. And so I don't know what the energy generation of Lick is. So this is me grasping at straws. Maybe if there's an energy advantage, Lickilicky is able to get off that second Shadow Ball. Turns out to still be a losing situation.
I'm so dead. I just keep picturing Vegeta beating up Majin Buu. Like, it's just...
No, Chansey will lose every CMP. If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I think so too. I've heard some people toying around with the idea of a timeout strategy and potentially having both Chansey and Blissey on the same team. And so it could be interesting. I wouldn't recommend it. In fact, I don't want to play against anyone that's even trying that because I don't have 5 minutes of life that I want to give away like that. But that's what I think the best thing for normal types is. I don't really think there's a ton. Porygon's interesting. It would be nice if it had a quicker, or Porygon 2, I mean.
Porygon 2 with Lock On.
Yeah, with Lock On, it could be nice. But its moveset, its charge moves, Hyper Beam and Solar Beam are recommended. What else does it have?
Zap Cannon.
Zap Cannon, yeah. It's just not too good of moves, but it's possible. I mean, someone better than me can probably make it work.
Interesting, guys. I am looking at one normal type, but I want to discuss it in the ninja section. We are just about to wrap up, though. I really hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I'm going to leave all of these guys' Twitter handles down in the description below so you can go and follow them. The one thing I want to touch on here at the end is a is finding the ninja of the Rose Cup. I think we looked at Timeless Cup, and personally, Sudowoodo was the ninja for me. We looked at the Fusion Cup, and Shiftry was the ninja. And if this is your first time hearing one of these conversations, I like to refer to the ninja as something that can come in with a slight maybe energy advantage, or it has enough coverage in its moveset that it can totally flip a match and just turn things on its head. So we need something that's really going to disrupt the Rose Cup meta, and I'm still searching for what that is, but I think we have a few interesting options. Would anybody like to take the torch on this and talk about what they think the ninja of the Rose Cup might be?
Thunderfang, Steelix, because technically it can take out all the tanks, it can take out the ghosts, it can take out flyers, it resists charm. I think I don't think there's like a complete, you know what I'm saying, nothing resists like ghost, normal, fire, and charm.
Well, we can think of Steelix in this way as well. If you look at Shiftry and Fusion Cup, as long as Shiftry didn't encounter a counter user, it was a-okay. You could trade blows with Noctowl as long as you had shields. You could beat all the water types. I think there's actually a really good argument for Steelix here, because as long as the fighting type is out of the question, if your opponent does not have a Mud Slapper, I think there's a good argument for Steelix, because like you said, Thunderfang will clap all the flyers. You do have Crunch for the ghosts, and then Earthquake to nuke everything else. I think there's a good argument for Steelix.
Well, maybe you can still run Dragon Tail. No, but then you won't do any damage to the Charmers because all you have is Crunch. And so yeah, you got to go Thunderfang.
Yeah, I've yet to find that ninja myself, and that has more to deal with my team strategy. I've been building around so far, which is a core of 2 heavy hitting fast move users who don't have who due to their low energy generation don't have a lot of stability in terms of the matchups they win.
It's very obvious, but I think it's Gliscor, just because of what it can do with some energy lead. If you can't call, or if your opponent can't call the charge move right, and you land the Earthquake, it can very well just change a matchup from there on out.
Yeah, I was running a little bit of research on that earlier today. So so Fury Cutter generates 4 energy per use, and so if you have like a 2 Fury Cutter advantage, I want to say you have like it's something ridiculous, like a full health Gliscor with a 2 Fury Cutter lead has something around like an 85 to 90 win percentage. Again, that's assuming like you're able to land the Earthquake, while with like a 3 Cutter Fury advantage, it doesn't increase it that much. So like I think like 92. So like basically all you need is like 2 Fury Cutters worth of energy. And given how fast that move is, that isn't that much. And if you're it would take a lot of practice, but if you're skillful, a Gliscor over 2 Fury Cutter advantage of energy is very deadly in this cup.
Okay, guys, I want to drop one on you that you probably have not considered, and I haven't tested it yet, but I really would like to try it. I know Church in particular is probably going to groan, because this is going to remind you a lot of a different Pokemon that I love in Freestyle. Its moveset is Shadow Claw, Aerial Ace, and Thunder. It's actually ranked pretty low in terms of the Rose Cup, but not out of the realm of possibility. It's ranked number 63. So that Pokemon is Ugly.
Oh boy. Here you go again.
Now, I love normal types with Shadow Claw, because you're going to own any kind of ghost that you encounter. If you look at Ugly's wins, I know this is peak meme, all right? But this thing doesn't play around. It beats Alolan Marowak. It beats Haunter comfortably, 822 battle rating. It can squeeze out a win against Medicham at 507. It beats Sableye with a ranking of 603, and because of that Thunder coverage, it beats Skarmory if you can shield bait with a battle rating of 700. Ugly is nasty.
Well,
so this is your 2.0?
This is my Linoon of the Rose Cup. Yeah.
It's the new environment. Well, I'll leave that up to you. I can't wait to see it in Scrim.
So Ugly's max CP is 1953. You actually don't need to max this thing out.
Whoa. You can even probably get away with a 0 attack on it and just go 0, 15, 15 and still...
Oh my god. I randomly have a 1489 for Ugly. Like, why do I...
Hey man. Hey, I'll tell you what. You get a 1 shield advantage to 0 shields and you beat Machamp. You hit that boy with the aerial ace, and you squeeze out of there with 22 HP, but you win.
I can't. I need to genie this thing right now. See what I'm dealing with.
I know I'm laughing right now, but I know there's gonna be some future Rose Cup where I lose
aerial ace
to one to Speedy because of this per ugly that's being run on this level.
Hey, Matt, ace. Send in your Vileplume, man. I'll hit you with the aerial ace.
I know, right?
It has aerial ace. This is so simple.
It's a perfect coverage move, though, at least, because you're guaranteed minimum neutral damage against a fighter, even if they're like fighting Steel or fighting Rock, for example.
Mm-hmm. It does also have access to Play Rough. So I don't know which is optimal, but Play Rough might be a good option too. That seems more like a cat move.
What does PV Poke say? You said 63. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Aerial Ace Thunder.
Let me tell you this. You can go up against Sableye in a 1v1 shield scenario, and you can go straight Thunder and still win. That's disgusting.
Level.
That is gross.
That's next level, bro. Oh my goodness.
All right, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to speak with you all. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this Rose Cup discussion? Anything we haven't covered? Church, before you came on, we did touch on flying types, a little bit on Skarmory, fire types as well. We went through the walls, the ghost, the Rhyhorn family, fighting fairy, other kind of weird, kind of in between the lines picks as well. And then we talked about a ninja focus early on in the cup. Is there anything else you gentlemen think we should add to the conversation?
Just for those who are a little iffy about Gliscor, to give some sort of comfort to them, but are like curious about it, Gliscor can go straight Earthquake and beat Steelix and Probopass. So the bare minimum you need from your ground type, it does. It does not need a bait with Night Slash against Steelix or Probopass. Please do not do that to yourself. Just go straight Earthquake. Or Earthquake against them to get the guaranteed knockout.
The two things that these two that I wrote down. Simply, one was because of today. The other one is shout out to Gengar, because it actually does the same thing that Haunter does, but it beats Haunter. So if you can't necessarily get that, it's number one. It beats Gliscor with a rating of 864.
Damn.
And it beats Wigglytuff 531. It beats Clefable 531. So it's interesting. The same thing loses to all the normal types pretty much. And then because of the new legacy, a beast that I've been trying to unlock for 1,000 years has finally arose from the ashes. Legacy Magneton that is now out here. Top 20, consistency rating of 100. Top matchups are going to be Gligar, can beat a Wigglytuff, can beat Golbat, can narrowly beat a Charizard even though it's Steel. And then, just loses to all the ground types for obvious reasons.
Nice. All right, gentlemen. Guys, if you want to follow these awesome trainers on Twitter, I will leave their Twitter handles down in the description below. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Comment your thoughts. What did we miss? What did we talk on that maybe you found educational or helpful? And if you really enjoyed this content and you want to see more meta discussions and battle footage, smash that subscribe button. Church, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. I think we got a lot of ground covered, and I hope this was helpful to some trainers.
Pleasure to be on.